There you go. Sounds a bit more like a clap, right? Now if we pause this for a second and let our brains refresh, we can play the shitty preset beat here again with all these EQs and you can hear the difference. Kick's a bit too loud. I still by no means really think it sounds good, but if we were listening to this, just hold this in your memory. Like, ew, I wouldn't put that in my song, understandably. But let's raise the disgusting factor a little bit by disabling all of our EQs and seeing what happens. Here we go. You want to see? Let's listen. A muddy mess. A monster. It's just this bit, it's this wall of noise with like a bit of a thump in the background. It's like, it's the worst. Like, listen to this. It makes you want to throw up. Especially that hi-hat. Hi-hats don't sound that way. So that's why we got our EQs. And of course, you can EQ things a bit more accurately, a bit more strongly, however you want to do it. But just a quick EQ here and change it to this. In fact, we can change something in the... Huh. There. I think that sounds a bit better. Really, what you do is you just mess around and keep moving things until it sounds good. But over time, you get like a few little ideas of what makes something sound good and what doesn't. So that's what you gain over time, but it's all through trial and error. Like, people don't have to teach you. I'll teach you a few little tricks. Usually, if you have a sound, you can see the sound spectrum stretches off to here. You've already cut out the bass. Usually just hitting number 5, making it like a moderately wide band, and then bringing it down will clarify things for some reason. Like, it'll add a bit of clarity by scooping out the mid-range. So instantly the lower tones and the higher tones are accentuated, and the stuff in the middle is taken out. And that's especially useful for things like kicks and lead synths, actually, and anything, really. So I'd say, like, your first approach after slicing out that bass that muddies everything up, best first approach is just to dip it a bit in the middle and see what happens. So we have this, and we can listen. Now I'm like, now that I changed the snare, I'm actually kind of thinking that it sounds decent. So let's snare on, snare off. Let's... You hear a buzz? Like, what is it? Every time the snare hits, right? That doesn't belong there. What's that doing? I guess you still kind of hear it. Maybe it's... oh crap, I don't know. But really, why would FL Studio rep their software with this snare? It's no good. Oh well. But anyway, when you're done everything, you want to put like a EQ on the entire track once it's entirely mixed and put together and everything. Yeah, when you're mastering it, you might want to have like a slight EQ, right? So, but there's this one EQ curve that I've found that it's quite odd, but it always seems to improve the clarity of sounds quite well. So it works for some mixes, maybe not for others, but let's toy around with it a bit. We'll have to hear this annoying beat a bit more. But the master track, if we put an EQ there, it affects everything here. It's from here at 103. So yeah, let's do an EQ. Play this. Sorry. Actually, I'm going to do the EQ without even listening. Just because it's a pattern I've actually found. Make this bigger. No, I can't. So what we do, we want to narrow the bandwidth of this a little bit. Get a bit narrower. We want to cut out around 2200. Just a little dip. We want to come... actually, we want to use a different one than this. Well, we want to cut out around 8K here. We want to boost above 14K. So we have this sort of curve here. We want to bring number 5 in. And we're going to really narrow... That's 6, damn it. We're really going to narrow the bandwidth of 5. And we're going to add a boost to around the 4,500 area, maybe in between. So we have that. You see this kind of wonky curve. Then we come over here and we're going to, again, decrease the bandwidth. We're going to sync around 2200. So you have this one, we cut off the low bass. We're not cutting off all the bass, we're just rolling off some of the low bass. You don't even have to roll it off that much. Rolling it off straight across here, lowering around 2200, boosting around 2300, 4300 here, syncing this one, which could also be closer to 10,000 if you want, and then boosting 14,000. So if we listen to this, usually, I'm not sure about now, but usually it gives pretty good effect for anything really. It just adds a bit of clarity to things, and let's just see. Yeah, see what I mean? I didn't have to listen to anything. Let's hear the difference. So you hear the difference here? This kind of sounds gross. This one sounds bright and alive. Wow. What is this magic pattern I've discovered? I didn't have to listen to anything. I just had to do what I discovered. And I did discover this on my own. I was just messing around with EQs and found that this consistently makes everything sound better. Isn't that weird? It's a bit of added value to the course, because I don't know anyone else that knows this. But really, yeah, don't feel bad about losing a bit of sub bass. You know, this is the sub bass, the bar that you hear is usually around here. Really big subwoofers, they can boost the bass themselves. Well, you want to roll off some of the really low stuff, because all the rumble will start messing with all the other waves up here. And I find that around 2200, it's shouty. Let's give you an example. If I raise it up, I might be able to get an example here. Here, that kind of hurts. Even right here. Yeah, this one sounds a bit better if I dip it around here. Yeah, snare and everything sounds a bit better. So you would get this general pattern and then just adjust it. And you'll have, like, this is like the mastering EQ here. It's magic. It always makes things sound better. Okay, not always. Sometimes your mix might be so perfect that you only require really minor adjustments. But usually this kind of livens things up. Hear that? This was before, actually, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning. That's with EQs even. It still sounds kind of bad, right? This is how bad the stock drums are. Don't use them. Don't be like Martin Garrix. He actually used the stock FL Studio kick in his song. What? Never do that. Don't be like him. And it was like a popular song too. Oh, jeez. But anyway, let's listen. This is no EQ, no magic, nothing. This is just what it sounded like when we started. Just extremely basic and just kind of shitty. So now what we want to do is turn on all our EQs, and you get to see how the sonic character has changed. And this is all just quickly doing some EQ stuff, you know. Hear that? I could throw this into a track now. Like, you see that the bass is more isolated, like there's more of a thump there, right? The high end has more room to breathe. There's not as much mid-range content messing everything up. I still think the clap and the snare sound bad, and no amount of EQing will change what the fundamental sound is, but obviously it sounds way better than what it sounded like before. Give me this one. That's the power of EQ. And when it comes to mixing, there's two things. You want to balance the track by turning down the volume on everything. You want to turn this off. This is the fruity limiter. It actually limits your progress. I don't think that's one of the limits it wants to do. But you turn this off, and then you have to make sure that none of these things, like if I play this, you see these? Sometimes they'll be up too high. You want to bring everything down and make sure that it's not going above a certain amount, right? So you want it to peak around here, right? And if it's going above there, then we got to turn it right down, right? That's what you got to do across the board. And also use your ears. Listen carefully. Then you go in here, turn on the limiter, and it sounds way better, right? That's just balancing out the track, you know. Some things are going to sound better quieter than not. But rule of thumb, when you're doing that, make sure that all of these dots kind of land around the same point, around here. Second notch down, around there. But then you use your discretion beyond there to make sure that everything sounds good. Yeah, that's your discretion. If you find that the kick sounds too loud or bloated or something, there's a lot of things you can do, like compression and everything. But the first step should be turning it down a bit. And if you have a big mix, then all of these things will be like turned down and up, around, and very rarely up. You want to mix down. You ever hear mix down? It's because you're mixing down. I'm actually not sure if that's what it means specifically, but that's kind of the gist I get from it. So you mix all of this. You turn off the fruity limiter, right? Make sure that nothing stands out. You can really hear what's standing out, what isn't. This can be mixed even further. But then when you turn on the fruity limiter, it makes everything louder and glues it all together, and ta-da, you got a nice track. So that will be it for my EQ section. And what I really want you to take away from this is this pattern right here, this Twilight Zone mystery magic pattern that I have. Yeah, it just sounds good. Just use it. If you need an EQ to liven things up, I'll just give proof one more time. See that? It doesn't take anything away from the sound either. Even when you have like a full track, vocal, synth, everything, putting that in at differing levels of severity, different levels of peaks and arrangements and whatever, it will just liven things up. Why? I don't know. Ask the audio gods.